Welcome to this week's masterclass, How to Alchemize Fear. I will be sharing with you in this masterclass my wisdom, tools and techniques for working with the energy of fear, transmuting it into love. I really hope that you enjoy, and if this workshop touches you in any way, please share. I'm sending you love. So I want to start this workshop by really getting into the roots of fear, how it feels, why it's there, what it's asking from us. So when I think about the emotional body, I really like to see it as a number of different frequencies and bandwidths of energy that are moving through our field, that are moving through our body. And depending on the speed of that bandwidth, that will have and trigger a different emotional reaction in our body. So imagine your petrol gauge in your car, and at the full end, we have the highest frequency emotion, the bandwidth that is vibrating at the fastest speed, and that would be love. And there are many iterations of love: wholeness, peace, joy, play. These are all expressions of higher frequency emotions. And the other side of the fuel gauge, we have our low frequency emotions. We have those that are operating at a very slow bandwidth. And at the very bottom of the gauge is fear. So at the whole space in between this emotion that we call love and this emotion that we call fear, we have a full spectrum of different emotions to be felt through this gauge, moving from anger, despair, grief, shame, guilt, which all are operating at a much slower bandwidth to that of love. And on the higher end of the spectrum, we have elation, excitement, joy, play, respect, all these different positive spectrum emotions that are vibrating at a much higher frequency. So in essence, the energy which flows through us is no different to whether to love or to fear. What is different is our own inbuilt system, our own lived experience, the impressions and the holes within our own field that change and alter the different frequency that we experience, and therefore the different emotional response that we have to a certain situation. Just as love is the ultimate goal of living, the ultimate emotional state to experience, the duality of that, the opposite side, the yin and the yang, is fear. So in this journey that we are all taking to this state of unconditional love, we have to also take a journey with fear. So this has really been a lot of my own personal workings, understandings, self-discovery, working and journeying with fear, and really the reason why I feel passionate about bringing this workshop to you today, so that we can really have an understanding of fear and start to use it as a catalyst to transmute it into the energy of love. Because as long as love exists, fear will as well. So I'd like to speak a little bit around what fear feels like. I think that we probably all have an example that we can pull upon when we've been asked, called to give a presentation, to stand up in front of a large group of people, maybe even a small group of people. And there have been nerves, and we've had a pounding in our chest. We've had a complete loss of memory of what it is that we need to say, why it is that we're even there. And I really want to tune into that for a moment to start to really understand the feeling of fear and how it is different to every other emotion that we experience. So fear is an emotion felt through the portal of the heart. So when you are experiencing fear, and this can be to a greater or lesser degree, more often than not, you are going to be feeling a quickening of the heart. That could come through in a flutter, it could come through in a thud. And this is wholly dependent on what you're experiencing and your own connection to the energy of fear. You might begin to experience that quickening of the heart, the increase in pace of the blood pumping around your system might start to create a disturbance in your stomach. Have you ever heard of the word funny tummy or nervous tummy? So that is because the heart and the stomach, the solar plexus, are directly linked. And then you might feel a dropping or a loosening of your bowels as well. And that really connects down to your root chakra. So just going through some of the physical symptoms that you can acknowledge when you are experiencing fear. The other very common physical symptom is a quietening of the voice and almost a closing of the mouth. So what's happening is this increase of energy coming through your body is wanting to find a release in some way. Yet the fear shuts down the throat chakra. So we are moving through from our body down all these different physical symptoms when we are processing the frequency and energy of fear in our body. The other impact that fear, when felt, is going to have in your body, in your system, is a connection to your thoughts. So when you're feeling fear, your thoughts are going to be at a very quick pace. Perhaps you're going around in circles thinking about the same thing over and over again. Maybe there's a lot of doubt, a lot of confusion, and things are not going to feel very clear in your mind. Your mind is going to feel foggy, interrupted, very busy. And that is all a product of the quickening of the heart and the experiencing of that frequency of fear in your field. I hope that you're beginning to really connect to some of these feelings that I'm talking about now and able to put them into the context of your own life. So the example that I am illustrating right now is a very intense form of fear. More often than not, the feelings of fear that we're holding that go back deep into our childhood, perhaps events that we've blocked or we no longer remember, are going to be having a very silent impact in our way of being. So we might not even realize that we're operating in fear when perhaps we decide to walk the other way to get to our friend's house, or we decide that we're not going to pick up the phone and call that person. We put it down to our likes and dislikes when in actual fact there is an underlying experience of fear that we have lived with for a very long time and we've just gotten used to. So a prime example of this is not speaking up, not speaking our truth, perhaps in the context of our family, with our friends, getting used to being silenced, being told that our opinions are not valid, a fear of being judged for what we think and what we feel. That feeling, that fear of being judged, all of a sudden becomes a part of our psyche, a part of our way of being. Maybe we won't experience the same thudding heart, the activation of the stomach and the bowels, but there will be an increased speed of thoughts that you're thinking. There will be a emotional feeling response in your body. And you will have an innate sense of knowing when you are operating in a fear state than when you're operating in a loving, centered state. From my own journeying, learning, and understanding, I have tracked back all the fears that we experience down to just 2 core root fears. Now, my understanding is that every single fear that we experience stems from either one of these 2 fears. The first fear is a fear of abandonment. And this is originating from being a child, being in the care of adolescents, those that are your caregivers, and experiencing at some stage the feeling of being abandoned. So that can come from a parental divorce, a parent walking out, even as something so what would seem insignificant as being late from being picked up from school. All of these experiences create trauma in the energetic field. They awaken and evoke the feeling of fear of being abandoned. And this can manifest all the way from fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear of judgment from others. And it all stems back from childhood and feeling this fear of being abandoned by your caregivers. So this is one of the 2 core root fears that I'm going to go through with you today. The second fear is the fear of our own power. So this fear originates from our own experience of us expressing our power as we grow up, as we begin to explore, and becoming aware that that power has an impact on others. We've probably all got an experience where we have hurt somebody else, or our actions or behavior made somebody else cry. So this creates a fear and a sadness within the child, within the development, and we begin to fear our own behavior and the impact on others. So these 2 core fears really illustrate the process of fear creation, because we are not born with fear. No child is born with fear. We learn it. And it is through the absence of love and the expression of our own power that generates the spectrum of fear that lays above that. So I really ask for you to consider these 2 fears in the context of your own life's experience, from when fear comes up for you, and reflect on whether you can relate them back to these 2 origin fears. So So now we've addressed the underlying fears. I now want to speak a little bit to why it's there. So fears are the root cause of our energetic blocks. And when we are blocked energetically, we are contained. Our energy field is contained. The way in which we show up is contained. And we are making choices not based on our own authentic truth, but on that of fear. So what the fear is asking from us when fear is presented is an opportunity to move beyond, to grow beyond the fear, to not be contained by it, to not be made small by it, but to move to the other side. And just like a muscle and the creation of muscle memory, when we do things time and time again, the more that we choose to move to the other side of fear, we are building this muscle memory. And one day we wake up and that fear has dissolved and it has dissipated. That block has been removed, and we are more in a state of ease and flow with our path and with our purpose. So what fear is asking from us, why it's there, this experience, this physical experience that we have in the heart that makes us want to go so tiny, what it is asking from us is courage. We are being asked to center ourselves in our hearts, to acknowledge it is there, and to call upon the energy of courage to move beyond to the other side. Without courage, we're unable to confront and rise up to meet the fear. And it takes courage to really understand what way that fear is asking you to move. Standing on the edge of a cliff about to do a bungee jump. Your heart is racing, pounding. You're in a state of pure fight or flight. Your whole body is saying, no, don't do this. This is a risk. Is courage doing it anyway? Stepping off the cliff's edge? Pushing beyond your physical response? Or is courage actually acknowledging the physical sensations that you are feeling? Owning the fact that this might not be the right thing to do, and turning around and saying no. And this is the question once again for you to ask yourself. What is this fear here to ask me? How can I muster courage to take the next step, whatever that next step might be for you? Sometimes we are guided and taught and shown throughout our world, throughout the media, that courage is pushing. And even though you feel fear, pretending that it's not there and doing it anyway. Some of the most courageous acts that I have witnessed in my lifetime are people rising up in their sovereignty, in their power, in their integrity to say, this doesn't feel right. I'm not engaging in this. So I will leave you with that to ponder upon. And then let's move into our next section of this workshop. So let's discuss now the impact of fear. When we're living in a fear-based way, when the life around us is fearful, we are operating not from our heart. but from our mind. The heart contracts, the heart closes down because the heart wants to protect. This is the inner child wanting to prevent feeling this fear. And what happens is the heart closes and we begin operating solely from the mind without the mind-heart coherence. And when we are operating purely from the mind, purely from what we think we should do, not how we feel, not in coherence with our heart and our body, we begin making decisions, making choices from a place of inauthenticity. We begin pleasing others in fear of what they might think, in fear of abandonment. And slowly these choices that we're making through solely the mind begin taking us step by step away from our path. We begin operating and living from energies such as wealth, fame, greed, jealousy, guilt, lust. All these low-level emotions and desires become our modus operatus. And we are not making our choices from this place of real centered, loving awareness. From this deep, authentic place within our body, within our heart, within our soul. So fear has a real ability to not just veer us off of our soul's path, but it also has the ability to shrink our energy field, to contain our world. Our world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller the more fearful that we become. And when we're getting smaller, our light is getting dimmer. Our possibilities and potential are contracting. We close and our life closes. So fear can have many destructive and toxic impacts and influences throughout our entire trajectory of our life, if we are not committed to going back, doing the work, and working with fear. Because all fear is asking from us is to muster and find the courage so that we can transmute it into love. So what is the solution here? We've spoken about the situation, the energy of fear, how we can detect it, and then the impact that it has on us, how it restricts our flow, contains our energy, veers us off our path. So now I want to give you a solution. How can we move to the other side? How can we transcend the fear? What even is at the other side? If we've been operating from this place for such a long time, we probably don't even know what is beyond. And what is beyond is pure, unbounding, unconditional love. Unconditional love for ourselves, for all the people that we have in our lives, for our planet. And when we are operating from that state, We are connected. We are flowing with ease and grace. We are in direct relationship with the experiences of our life, as well as our own inner state, our inner world, our deep self. We are thriving in our life, and we are operating from a place of centered, balanced awareness. We understand that we are the creator of our life, the sole creator of our life, and we are participating in that creation process every step of the way. We acknowledge that fears come and go, but no longer do those fears push us into corners and make us smaller. They make us bigger. They make us rise taller and fuller in our skin. Because the more that we rise up in courage, the more that we work that muscle, and the more that our body just knows. It is no longer afraid where it's going to go, who it's going to meet, what it's going to be asked for. It's just going to be able to deal in a present way with whatever is coming. So, how we alchemize the energy of fear is through the heart, and upon cooling in the energy of courage. Courage is a noble, centered emotion that requires our entire being to rise up like a proud lion, to know ourselves well enough to know what it is that we need in this act of courage. So let's now alchemize fear. I'm going to take you through the 4-step process that I use and have used throughout my whole journey to move to the other side. Step 1, feel it. So one of the very basic essences of healing is simply holding space for what it is that we're feeling. In our culture today, we're so heavily taught to hide our feelings, to push them down as though they don't matter, to stay strong. Yet we are moving into a space now where we cannot hide from our emotional body. We came down here to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, the negative and the positive. And what that takes is a practice of feeling it all. Holding space for your feelings and emotions to be felt without judging them, without wishing that they weren't there. So when the feeling of fear arises within your body, the first step is to take a breath. Pause for a moment. Sit down, close your eyes if you can, and just feel it. In that moment, you will begin to recognize the specific sensations within your body that this emotion is awakening. The quickening of the heart, the churning of the stomach, the loosening of your bowels, the tightening of your throat. As you allow your awareness to simply engage in the physical sensations that are going on in your body in the moment, you are showing an act of love to your feeling body, to your inner child, to this emotion. You are holding space for it to be felt. And you are beginning to connect to the emotion in a way that you have never connected before. So feeling it, holding it, experiencing it, not cognitizing it and thinking about it, but just becoming present with what is. Moving with the sensations as they awaken will kickstart this process of alchemy. Step 2 is to understand it. So once you have become present with the emotion and how it is manifesting physically in your body, we are then calm in relationship to what's going on, and then able to go deeper to understanding the root of this fear. So more often than not, the fears that we experience in the present are a product of our unhealed trauma in the past. Not all the time, so I do want to caveat, we might be feeling a feeling present in the moment, our flight or fight, creating a reaction for a purpose. But from my experience on this healing journey, more often than not, it is connected to some unhealed trauma in our past. And this is the lens to which I'm approaching this workshop today. So what I'm going to ask for you right now is to close your eyes and connect into a feeling of fear, the last time that you felt fear. So close your eyes, take a few breaths, relax in your body, and then ask yourself, when was the last time that I felt the emotion of fear? Allow your whole energetic field, your memory, your feelings to go back to that moment. And just understand it a little bit. Understand the triggers around you at that time that surfaced that fear. Connect into that fear. So understand how it felt in your body, how it made you respond. And then I'm going to ask you the question, when was the first ever time that you experienced that fear? When was the first ever time that I experienced this fear? Allow yourself to get drawn back into a memory. Whatever intuitive sense comes to you first, that's what you are being called to go with, to feel. Don't question it, don't judge it, don't think about it. Just allow yourself to go there. Now you're in the memory from the past. I'm asking you to bring back as much as you can remember from that period of time. Where were you? Who were you with? How are you feeling? What was happening in that moment? Allow yourself to go back, to feel, to understand it as deeply as you can. What was it that you were really scared of back then? What were you scared of? Now asking, can you love the one who is scared? Can you pour love on the one who is scared? Can you wrap your arms around your inner child in this moment, understanding what it was that she was fearing, whether it happened or not? Experience it, allow it, understand it, and pour love onto it. So going back into the root of these fears in this way, through your own memory, through your own intuition and trust that your soul is guiding you to understand it, to go into the root, allows you to begin to understand whether this fear that's showing up in your present reality is a fear of abandonment or a fear of your own power. So reflect on this process that you've just moved through and write down whether you were scared of being left, whether you were not having your needs met with the love that you needed at that time, or whether the fear is that you were hurting somebody else. Get down to this core and see if you can reflect as much as you can in your journal to really understand this fear. So step 3, we're now going to meet the fear. So this is where the alchemy really happens. So we felt it in the present moment, the physical sensations that are manifesting as a product of the fear. Then we've understood it. We've gone back into our energetic past, into our memory, and got a sense of where this fear was created, where it came from. And now we want to come back into the present to meet the fear with courage. So you can either do this through asking yourself a question mentally, writing it down, speaking it out loud with yourself, with a friend. But how is this fear asking me to be courageous in this moment? What courageous act is being asked from me through the presence of this fear? How am I being asked to be courageous right now? Asking yourself any of these 3 questions, you're going to have an intuitive sense, an intuitive feel on how you're being asked to show up, to rise up, to meet the fear. Now the 4th step is really about then putting that into play. And this can happen instantaneously if this whole process is happening within the moment, or this can happen as a gradual response. However it is, your task is then to thank this fear for coming to you, for signaling to you that you are being called to show up in courage, to pour love onto the fear and to release it. When we thank something, we are giving energetic love to that wound. We're placing a balm of love on the wound in our field, and we're repairing it. We're rebuilding, and we release it. So moving through that whole process, you are going to come out the other side feeling a sense of renewal. You're going to come back into a place of centered awareness, of wholeness, and able to move forward through the portal of your heart. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's masterclass, that you have received insights, wisdom, tools, understanding to really feel empowered in working with the energy of fear, so that you continue to grow and expand and awaken in flow and in ease. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Thank you for being part of this growing community and family of magical, magical beings. I am sending you love and magic.